Okay, so I want to talk to you about Python and the special way it interacts with aggregation, or I should say that it's slightly different in 2.6 than it was previously in the shell, but not in Python, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. So prior to MongoDB 2.6, MongoDB returned all the aggregation results in one big document. And this has a lot of limitations. For instance, if all the aggregation results are going to be returned in one document, then of course your aggregation results are limited to the size of a document, which is 16 megabytes. And now, new in 2.6, very exciting, is that aggregation can and does, inside the shell, return a cursor. So that's a big difference. And what we've seen inside the shell, of course, is that aggregation does return a cursor and gives you all the documents one after another using an iterator. But prior to 2.6, this was not the way it worked. Prior to 2.6, you got one big document. So the question is, what happens in Python? Well, it turns out that in Python, we still return by default one big document in 2.6. So Python lives over here. But it optionally can do what the shell does. So let's draw this out a little bit more because I think it's kind of tricky. So we had 2.4 and we had 2.6. And then we had what happens in the shell, and then we had what happens in Python. So in 2.4, the shell and Python returned one big document. And in 2.6, the shell now returns a cursor, and Python still returns one big document, but optionally, Python returns a cursor. Let's see this in action. It's pretty interesting. Okay, we're going to once again aggregate on our zip code collection. This is a small Python script. Let's go through it line by line. We're going to import PyMongo, get a connection using Mongo Client. We're going to connect to our aggregation database, and then we're going to aggregate. We're going to group by our state, and we're going to sum our population up. Very straightforward aggregation, the same one we've been doing over and over again. And then we're going to print the result. Let's see what we get. Okay, so now we'll see what we get when we run this population by state.py file that I just showed you. Wow, that's a big mess, but let's go through it carefully and see what it is. All right, and remember, all I did in this particular program is print the result I got from the aggregation. So if I go through here, I see that the result is in itself a document. It returns the fact that aggregation was true, and that the result is this array of documents. Each one is one of the results of the aggregation query. That, for instance, we have, let's see, Pennsylvania has a population of maybe 11 million. I can't quite see what that is. This is North Dakota has a population of 638,000. That's a very small state. And over here on top was West Virginia with a population of 1.7 million. Is that right? Wow, small state, 1.8 million, if you want to round it. So this aggregation result would be limited to 16 megabytes. This is the older style of returning results. And we didn't want to break Python programs in 2.6, so we kept the old behavior by default. However, you can get the new behavior where you get a cursor and you're not limited to 16 megabytes, and I'll show you how. So right here, we have the same aggregation query, and in this case, we're going to tack on a new value called cursor equals, we did cursor equals empty document. And this keyword argument to aggregation is going to change the behavior of the aggregation framework. So now that we're going to get back a cursor, I can no longer just print the result. Instead, I have to iterate through the result. So let's do that. For doc in result, print doc. And that should take care of it and print every document in the result. This is because I gave the cursor equals empty document option. So let's run through there, see what I get. And there you go. We get that nice clean result we got before, which is similar to what you get in the shell, where you see that each document in the aggregation result comes through as a separate document in the cursor that you get back, and you can iterate through them. And if you wanted to set other options, for instance, if you wanted to set the option for using disk, you could do that. You could say allow disk use equals true. And you can see this is a different style of giving options than you gave in the shell. So keep that in mind. This is Python. And if I do that and go through it, this shouldn't change the result at all. It gives you the same result, maybe a tad slower. So allow disk use will let you get around that 100 megabyte limit for any pipeline stage. Okay, so anyway, that's how you ask for the behavior that is default in 2.6 in the shell, which is to get a cursor back versus getting one big document back. And generally speaking, it's a lot more convenient to get one big document back, but because we didn't want to break Python programs that worked in 2.4, we made it backwards compatible by having the default in Python be the older behavior. In the shell, we were not backward compatible. The default behavior is now to return a cursor that gives you a list of documents. Okay, it's time for a quiz. Let's see how carefully you were listening. Let's talk about MongoDB 2.4 and 2.6 and the behavior of aggregation, in particular the aggregate method, and whether it returns a cursor or a document in the shell or PyMongo. Which of the following statements about aggregation results are true? Check all that apply. And I won't read them to you, but you should read them and figure out which ones are true.